All right, awesome. Guys, before we start, my name is Lakshit Bhyana. I'm a basketball player turned performance marketer. And now a headhunter exclusively for digital marketers. I help digital marketers get a high paying job using my method CVC. So I run a community of around about 10,000 marketers, and whether we across our videos we've got more than 1 million views till now. We have helped them around about 5 2.5 cr till now we've done in raising job offers, helping them go to the next level. But the real reason I'm not born a headhunter or born a marketer. My journey started from me selling vegetables in a farm. After that, I did a drop shipping store. I started a marketing agency just like everybody else, and then I got a job in New York. Then I got a job in China, and I thought that if I'm getting such amazing jobs, why not I help my friends? Then I started. Extended it to the world, and so far, of course, I'm not going to say ki I'm not making money out of it. I am, but I'm also trying to make that positive mark ki yaar, maybe I can bring that to the world, because being a recruiter and being a career coach, I know that if there is a job, there is a resume, and if there is a resume, there is a job, right? There's that. The bridge is missing, and I'm just trying to be that bridge in this sort of economy. And that's what about me. And where I am heading is that by the end of this year, I know that's too ambitious, but I want to raise for my community 100 crores worth job offers. And I know this year, if I'm not able to reach, and I'm going to extend it to the next year, but I'm going to achieve it very soon. And we are growing rapidly. So this is where a little bit about my past, where I am today, and where I am in the future. Now I'll sort of pass on the mic to Shreyoshi and then to you, Gandharvi, so that everybody can really absorb in and soak in what Gandharvi you have to say, and of course Shreyoshi you as well.
A big hello to everybody who's joined into the podcast today. My name is Shreyoshi, and I'm the founder of Verve Human Capital Management Consultancy. We are based in the UAE. And to tell a little bit about myself, I have about 17 plus years of work experience in the HR domain itself. I've managed all domains of HR across the MEASIS region, which is Middle East, North Africa, CIS, as well as the APAC region. I have forefronted, a lot of projects in the HR digital transformation space, and have been responsible for forming a lot of innovative solutions for the organizations that I have worked for. My last stint was with the Air Arabia Group, and currently, I've become an entrepreneur, and I'm really excited to build this space, working collaboratively with HR leaders across the globe. And today I'm very excited to have a chat with you and Lakshit. Lakshit, that was a beautiful journey that you have documented, so beautifully to all of us. And over to you, Gandharvi.
Thank you so much, and really excited to be part of this podcast today with the group. So, just a little bit about me. I've been in the people space for the last 23 odd years. I started my journey as a trainer, moved into consulting, and then found my calling within a pure generalist space, as an HR professional. I don't consider myself as an HR professional, honestly. I consider myself more as a business partner who works with the business. I've had the opportunity to work internationally as well. So I've done various roles right from within India, across Europe, across, LATAM, and also kind of done a little bit in the space of global roles, in the space specifically of talent. Led teams in the space of talent management, talent development, business partnering, setting up a lot of HR foundations. My strength, and I keep saying this, is I find the simplicity in chaos, and I love to make sense of all the chaos around me. I'm a foundations builder. I love to evolve and bring in new practices. Not a very traditionalist in terms of people practices, like to get innovative and just do what's right for our people, honestly. I think being on the side of HR, a lot of us think, people think that we are supposedly supporting the business, but I think I try and find a blend between what's right for our people, but also what is right for the business. Today, I'm heading up, business partnering for Crocs India, supporting them with the retail journey since the last 1.5 years. Really excited for the path ahead and really looking forward to continue building on the talent agenda for our organization and for future organizations, wherever that may be. So that's just a little bit about me.
Wow, lovely. I really loved one thing which you wrote, which is a business partner to the HR, right? I'm sure she will take this because the HR side is hers. But to all the marketers listening here, right? A lot of people say that HR rangoli banate hain. I mean, है ना? But she's saying HR BP, मतलब HR business partner, because she's helping achieve those goals. And this one thing I want to stress so much on it for marketers, because marketers being on the top line, chasing that top line, still doesn't understand to talk like a CFO or to the CEO. Right, but that's what we want to talk more and more and more and more. As a marketer, as a job seeker, and sure she will catch you on the HR front. I am sure. But my first question, which is to you, is what would Gandharvi do with the amount of wealth of knowledge she has right now? But what if you were 25 years old, right? And let's say your current salary is 12 LPA. Now, how will you go plan that 100% hike? Rather, what will you aim for, right? If you are at 12 LPA, what is the correct hike you should aim for? And then how to chase that? What would Gandharvi do?
So when I was 25 years old, I don't even think this was a possibility. To be honest, I think the world has changed a lot, and the digital marketing space has developed. Um, we are now in a world of tech. We're in a world of becoming more visible online versus the old traditional send your resume and kaam ho jayega kind of way of working. I think if I was 25 today, and if I had to approach it differently from what I've done in the past, I honestly wouldn't think of myself as a job seeker. I think I would start thinking of myself as a brand. And the reason for that is I think you get about 600 applications for every role that's posted, right? And how is it that as a 25-year-old, I need to be able to show proof of what I think and how I execute? So one of the things that I would love to be able to do if I was 25 today is to actually build my brand, whether it's through LinkedIn, whether it's through social media. It's really being able to stand out. Today, digital space is so strong that even a newsletter that goes to the CEO can show up and be one of those pop items that separates you from the crowd. I would never recommend personally, and this is me not speaking as an HR person, but for me, it's not so much as the money that I'm chasing. At 25, it's the experiences. Money will come. You could end up landing a job at Google at 25 and earning X amount, but you could also work in a startup, maybe earn a little bit more, but build your brand a little faster. It's many ways to do it. So I would think it's branding yourself as one that I would do. And today we have those tools and systems in place to be able to do that. I think the other thing is companies, organizations just don't want anyone who can run an ad, as an example. Anyone can do that. I go learn a course and there you go. I can say I know how to run ads, run a couple of them, and there you go. I think what companies are looking for, and that's coming from the fact that we have a very young generation today in the world, in the market, it's the ability to differentiate yourself as someone who can connect your campaigns to business outcomes. So if I'm spending X dollars on running marketing ads and campaigns, or doing analytics, how is that building into insights and outcomes for the business? Because at the end of the day, you have to generate revenue. You could make 1 million ads, run 1 million campaigns, and if that's not really generating that, I think companies are looking for those people who would stand out. And as a 25-year-old, I would, if I'm not a 25-year-old, actually, as if I'm someone much more senior, but telling a 25-year-old, I would really recommend of showing how you would actually move the needle for the brand versus saying, hey, I can run ads. How is it that you would make those ads move the needle? And I think, the last thing is, and it really does boil down to networking a lot in my view, which is instead of chasing companies, I'd really think I would want to spend time being visible in the ecosystem. A lot of roles today, people go ahead and apply. You really don't get selected and then you get demotivated. And I think the ones who do really know how to engage on the networking side. So engaging with leaders online, showing up, in networking forums, really making themselves being visible, but also understanding the tone of the audience that they're relating to. So it's really the subtle familiarity that often tips the balance. But not everyone can do that. So at least, start building your brand, start building yourself where you can using the digital space, become a solutions provider, think about how you can move the needle for the business. That would be my three suggestions that I would at
Wow.
least give myself or any other 25-year-old in the digital marketing space.
Wow, wow, wow. I am so happy because you're speaking the language. I am just, please, that's why I was sending hearts and celebrations in between because I'm just like resonating so much. And I know my community also be like, Lakshat, tu yahi keh raha tha. I know you were saying all of this. I could see some head nods of Pooja, Dhruv, and all of those people, right? Awesome. So just to quickly summarize it so that it's good for the people who recently joined is one, be a solution specialist, attach your KPIs to the goals. Second, make sure you're moving the needle. You have some sort of personal brand, some sort of networking skill so that you can establish a contact and not just rely on the resume. Right now, as a marketer and in the marketing community, personal brand is very loosely used. All right, we very loosely used in our community. So, what is a personal brand for job seekers? How to make my personal brand or how to stand out for a company like Crocs or any niche, and why is a niche important? So that's where I want to pick your brain now.
I think it's really important in the sense of personal brand. One is knowing what you want to do. I
Hmm.
think that is where the journey starts. I think there are so many digital marketers out there. I feel a lot of times at this generation that we have and the age that we have that is working, they're just chasing to find the job versus finding, hey, this is what I really want to do. Or this is the value I want to add. So I think for me, personal brand comes down to what gets you excited in the morning. What is it that you wake up and say, you know what, today I'm going to change this part of the organization or this part of my campaign, and this is what it's going to lead to. It's really knowing what you want to do. And I know there's this whole thing of do what you love, it will make you happy, it will give you satisfaction. And at the end of the day, we all know this, and it's spiel as well. Some people are lucky to find it, some people are not. So I think it's about really finding the space that you want to operate in, making that notable to people, showing not just the branding side of your work, but also of you as a person. Companies really do look for people who they can relate with and who can relate with them, right? And I think that's super important as far as I'm concerned, at least for myself, where my brand is concerned. What do you stand for? And then voicing it out. I think we all have a voice. People get really attracted, I feel, a lot of times to branding of yourself and what you are and who you are, and what makes you you. I know what makes me click today. I didn't know it 25 years ago, honestly. So I think, that for me stands out as a personal brand. I think niche is what you picked up on as well, right?
Hmm.
Figuring that niche out is super important. And to get to that stage, sometimes it's important to get the right person to guide you, finding a mentor, doing, taking some risks, at least as far as picking up projects, trying, testing. So I think it's not going to happen overnight for anybody. I know people who still don't know what excites them, who still don't know what their niche is, and then there are some who just know it immediately. So I think for me, personal brand in summary is who you are, identifying what you stand for, what excites you, and then really making that visible and noticeable through the work that you do, through either social media, newsletters, networking, connecting with people, and then really drilling down to what that niche is. What is your niche in the space of digital marketing?
Hmm.
And I think there are so many versions of it today. Things are changing every single day. It's really keeping up to it and then continuing to build that niche.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. I am so loving this conversation because you segued into my next question, right? Which is you spoke about things which excite you, right? And think you need to know a niche so that the niche will bring in benefit according to when you're giving the interview, right? When you're talking and when you're actually doing the work, because you don't want to go and end up in a company for 6 months and jump onto the next train. That will not lead you to the good one in the longer run. So I get it, but a lot of people now, for example, let's say after whatever you've told, we've understood what a personal brand is and how to make one. But how to establish a contact with the HR, right? How much follow up is an okay follow up? Because I know I message you hundred times on WhatsApp, on LinkedIn, and here and there. So what is okay? What is that thin line? When should I stop, or when should my community stop? When should they not stop? How to follow up? Is follow up polite or is it bad? So these are certain things which so many members of me, they keep on messaging me. Please shed light here.
To be honest, I don't know if there is an actual line because, and this is where, the gray kind of steps in. A lot of times where there's a company that you want to get into. I think in those cases, it can be easy, it can be tough. You can reach out to the HR, the talent acquisition team. I think a lot of times in most organizations, it works on the play of referrals. So a lot of times, if you know someone in the company, ask them to help connect you with the HR. I think a lot of people who reach out to me, I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn.
Of course.
Hey, I'm looking for a job. And a lot of times I feel bad that I can't respond to all of them because we may not have the right opportunity. So I think it works both ways. As HR professionals, we are overwhelmed with messages, so we end up having to ignore a lot of times. I think the way I would play it is, if it was me, I would reach out to HR, yes, once or twice or thrice at the max. If there is an opportunity available in the organization, then I would really use the approach of sending out a customized note to the talent acquisition team, to the HR person handling the role. And usually on LinkedIn, you would know who the recruiter is if that's been disclosed when the role is open. I think the other way that I would recommend doing this is for the individual to actually network, not in the option of opportunity to seek a job, but actually just get your name out there with the talent acquisition person. A lot of times, HR business partners, heads of HR may not look at these messages. Talent acquisition is on the lookout all the time because they're always building the talent pool and building that pipeline. So change the direction a little bit. When you know there is a role open, reach out. Share your resume. Share not just the resume, but by saying, hey, I'm looking out for a job, stand out in that message. I know it takes effort, but to customize it a little bit and say where you can add value based on the role. That is something that will always stand out for the HR person. If it's a networking where you think that's your ultimate company to go to, build your connect with the talent acquisition person. They will always have the pool open and the talent pipeline ready. And they will reach out to you because we know attrition is on the rise. We know every year there is a certain time of the year when this does happen. Start tagging that a little bit and reaching out to people. But keep the context in mind when you are connecting. So if you're just connecting to share the resume, great. It's a good opportunity, but that's just one touch point. If you look for roles and you know there are options available in that organization, then go ahead and really customize your message. Send out an example of what you have done, the kind of work that you want to do, what excites you, where you would add value. Nothing generic. Really customize it to the organization and keep connecting with the talent acquisition teams. They are your best source versus reaching out to a head of HR because then it'll get lost. That's my honest opinion. Just knowing my inbox on LinkedIn, it can get really crazy.
100%. 100%. Guys, just to make sure and tell you very openly, to get Gandharvi here, and again, thank you so much for being here. It means a lot to me.
Sorry about this.
No, please, you don't have to be. This is the rule of the game. I want everybody to know that I messaged Gandharvi almost 20 times, right? I know I might have a thick skin, and like Gandharvi said, I know she's bombarded with messages like these. I am not saying that I sent something new calling her for the podcast. I might be the first person. No, she's been called over and a lot of times, but still something, my consistency might have attracted her कि चलो यार करके देख लेते हैं, तब से मेरे दिमाग खा रखा है, whatever her thoughts are, right? But she came. And I'm just trying to tell you, you don't have to be like that, but a gentle follow up is always appreciated. So, guys, this is a message to my community that, guys, please be gently, be respectfully, but firmly go behind what you want, right? And not to the talent manager, sometimes the hiring manager, network, showcase your work, and that will really help you to get inside the door. And that's what my modules, that's what I keep on shouting and howling. But yeah, so thank you so much, Gandharvi. The amazing thing about this is that we've already segued into the life of an HR, how HR is thinking, how HR is hiring, because that's what the mind I wanted to majorly pick on. Right. So now I would like to sort of pass on the mic to Shreyoshi. Shreyoshi, please take on the mic, the baton, and shed some light how HRs think. What are maybe problems Gandharvi is facing, right? And what are the goods and bads? Just the life. I would love to know, have a conversation of two HRs. Awesome. Here you go.
Thank you, Lakshit, for passing the baton. And yes, so Gandharvi, when you were speaking, I was on the other side of the table just a couple of months back, and I can resonate with every word that you said. How candidates get in touch, and how it is to feel overwhelmed all the time with the messages that you get versus the firefighting that we do on the floor on a daily basis. Having that balance and then reaching out and then solutioning is what takes the is the cherry on the ice cream. So now what I really liked about your thought process is this, that you said that you like to unlearn outdated leadership playbooks, and you challenge the corporate jargons and try to bring about solutions. Now, in a time like this, where the future of work is constantly changing, gig economies are coming into play, specifically in marketing. And where I see now marketing is sort of blurring out its boundaries, it's seeping into every crevice of the industry. Even if you're an HR person, you need to have certain marketing skills because you are working on employer branding. You are working with candidates, you are trying to project the right jobs, trying to bring in the right talent. So, I would like to know from you, in this tug of war, where do you think the right fitment comes between hiring for skill and hiring for the right culture fitment? Because again, that is very important. A lot of people are showing off a lot of things on CV, but when you meet the person and you interview the person, the personality, the attitude is completely different, where we also judge whether the person is the right culture fitment or not. So over to you, like to know your thoughts on it.
I think it's been a debatable topic for years. I don't think there's ever a right answer. I think all the companies I've worked in the past and even today, we always focus on two things when we look at people: the what and the how, right? I think my view is probably a little bit more on one side, being in HR, but we always balance it out when we are hiring. I think skills are always teachable, and everybody knows this. The culture is not. I think we can always train someone, as an example, on Salesforce in a span of 3 months. Culture is something I don't think you can actually ingrain into people. It's not something that if they don't believe in it, they just don't believe in it. And by culture, I don't mean it's about, being nice or just fun. I think it's about whether someone's personal values really align with the company's. And for an individual, that's the bit that should be non-negotiable. If my value system doesn't match with the organizations and vice versa, if the organizations doesn't match with my personal ethics or value system, then I know at that point of time, that's not going to be a fit. Now, as an example, if I like to innovate, and that is what defines me as an individual and my way of working and my culture, then I would want to work in an organization that strives in that space versus someone which is very rigid or rule-based. And, that's when the individual struggles. So when I think about it, it's a debate. It's a totally debatable topic where people will always today say, Gandharvi, we want to hire people who can do the job now, who can take the business from X and make it 2 times or 3 times. And then my conversation is always, yes, we'll find that person. However, where we do not like to negotiate much is on how the person does it. So for me, culture is how. I could be a high performing person, but if I am extremely talented, high potential, knows everything that needs to be done, but my how is a problem, that is where it clashes with our organizational values. I think as business leaders or HR leaders, we need to find a balance of both. Because when there's a clash in most organizations, unfortunately or fortunately, the culture side will always take on, because I can always hire someone who I can train. But if I have a high performer or a talented, skilled individual who actually, and this may not be the right choice of words, but poisons the dynamics of the team, then that costs me a lot more as an HR professional than adding the value, because then that kind of drills top down, seeps into the entire team, and then you can start seeing a change in the team dynamics. So I think for me, I'm a little bit more on the side of I would love to train people if they are not skilled, but if the dark horses who exist today in the world, who may not be very communicative as an example, but we know they can do the job really well, or they have passion, but I know they may not be skilled. I'd love to bring them on board, train them, let them perform and build the confidence. But at least we know that they'll work well with the team, they'll get along with each other, and then they'll do what it takes to get the job done. So for me, unfortunately, culture will trump in terms of, over skills, but it doesn't mean we'll always go and hire someone who has zero skills all the time. We'd love to find that person who has a blend. One or two things could be up or down, and that's where we train them. Because even at Crocs today, our organization, we really value our behaviors. And that's what drives us in what we do every day, how we recognize people, how we perform as a team. So I think for me, that's where I kind of want to close it at, which is, for us, if values and cultures are aligned, everything else will fall into place.
True. In fact, I'm really intrigued to sort of ask you another follow-up question to this culture bit. And I know how important culture is, because you can hire a fresher with zero skills and then sort of groom that person up the ladder. But when you are going for a lateral hire, somebody with experience, the skills and the culture fitment really matter. But, in most organizations, you will see that there is a vision, mission statement, and the culture sort of, is drilled down by the CEO, and then every team, which is part of the larger views, they will form their own micro culture. So as an HR, how do you ensure that you get a candidate to fit into those micro cultures, which in some way can be aligned to the organization, but in many ways it can also be unique?
I think microcultures do exist. Every team has their own way of working. I think it's a plus in many ways, because based on the leader, you tend to, speed up things or do things at a certain pace. What I truly believe is culture is not an HR driven agenda. And it cannot be. So I've heard, that, HR should do engagement activities. HR should talk about values. HR should do this and that. And I keep going back to my leaders and saying, it's not our issue to fix. Unfortunately or fortunately, HR is here as an enabler. So one of the things that we normally like to do is empower our managers. And to do that, for instance, when you look at the hiring side of things, we have in our organization and in past organizations as well, our talent acquisition team has actually curated questions for behavioral interviews. Now, behavioral interviews give us the blend of assessing skills, assessing how they have performed and what they have performed and how they have performed. So what we have done is we've tried to find ways where at least when we interview and assess, and when the business interviews and assesses, they go ahead and use some of these behavioral questions to be able to at least get to the stage of, at least at a high level, we know this person will be the right fit for us. If these people come through referrals, I think there's a little bit more micro tuning I need to end up doing from a business and an HR standpoint, which is, always focusing on our values. Now, what we normally look for in most of our interviewing practices is we look for talent that can actually fit in the larger culture expectations and behavioral expectations. And I don't even call it culture anymore, but culture fit is a loosely used term, where they expect everyone to be nice and sweet and polite. I think the way we look at it is behaviors. So this is our vision, mission, and our values. And then we look at these behaviors that come from those values. And so what we do is we always assess for the higher one, which is someone optimistic? Is someone, going to be driven? Is someone going to be able to implement and execute? And then when we bring them in, we really, in my past organizations and now have also ensured that we can go ahead and find a way to integrate these behaviors into everything we do. So whether it is your performance assessment, it is your recognition, it is your feedback. And so these micro behaviors then become a subset of the larger behaviors that we have. But one of the things I honestly do is work with my leaders. It's not something that I would want to drive on my own because it's impossible with large scale organizations. So one is fitting it into our employee ecosystem. At every touch point, they understand and they know where these behaviors will add value to them, how it adds value, and how we would like people to work in an organization. And I think the second part is working with the leaders to continuously engage them and cascade these messages. So as an example, we don't believe in, at least I don't believe in, giving a slap on the wrist because someone said something which was incorrect. I would actually go back to the manager, share the incident and say, now you tell me how you want to assess this and deal with this. Keeping in mind that we have an expected ways of working, and then, that has happened. So I think it's that fine blend, but managers to take accountability for it, for us to use behavioral practices and questions when we at least start interviewing talent, and then to make it a part of the full ecosystem. So even if the micro culture exists, it's always a subset of the larger behavioral expectations that we have.
True, absolutely. In fact, microculture plays such a key role that you'll see between different business units or departments. There are different rates of attrition. There are different rates of productivity. There are different behavioral parameters that every team has. So it becomes such a critical part. And I loved it when you said that this is not owned by HR. HR is just an enabler. We can cascade the bigger picture to all the teams, but how you create that internal environment is completely the onus of the business leader. Now, that brings me to my next question, that what do you think are the common, so-called misbeliefs about HR, where people have a certain impression. I think Lakshit started off with the, that example where HR means making rangolis. That has become such a common thing. I've often heard from so many other leaders where they mock HR department as, it's not human resource, it is human remains. And that sort of made me crack up, and people have this conception, what does HR really do other than do all these things? So what do you think are the common, beliefs that people have, and how should we break that myth and really show them how HR is actually an enabler and a connection bridge between all the departments?
So there are so many actually misconceptions. I'm going to try and keep it simple and go to the more common ones. The Rangoli one is very common. Get an engagement event done. Get a Diwali party done. And I'm like, wow, this is just not the space I operate in. A lot of times in my head, I keep thinking this to myself. But I think, the way I look at it, there has been a bad rep for HR because HR is still in that evolution journey. So it started off with just doing payroll, then doing facilities, then doing payroll and facilities. Then we added a little bit of talent, then we added a little bit of hiring. So I think then we added this concept of business partnering. I think HR over the years has evolved. When I started my career, I probably thought the same thing. I didn't start in traditional HR, I started in training, so I was never part of that conversation. I think over the years, I've heard so many versions, but I have a few that I can think of at the top of my head. HR is the company's police force. I think that's my favorite one. We are just here to enforce a lot of things. But I think the whole point is, the way I look at it is, and I don't call it HR for a reason, because the name will change. You're right. Human remains was one that I heard as well in my career, and I almost cracked up when I heard it as well. And then I started using it as a term, saying we are not human remains, we are human resources. So what I normally do is I actually don't tag myself as an HR person. I tag myself as a people function or a talent function for exactly this reason. And I think it's the change of the narrative. So the way I look at it is we're not a police force. We are actually here as the architects of the workplace experience. Everything from, how careers are built, how people are made to feel about the workspace, about the feedback they receive, whether they stay, they go. I truly believe that is influenced by the people team. And I'm going to start call it HR. I'll call it people team for now, so that
Definitely,
we
definitely. Change
focus
it now.
more about people. I think the second one is, like I said, I started with we are the enforcer of policies. I think as business partners or as HR leaders, that's not really about policies. It's about asking, are we compliant? Is this the right decision that will help our people and the company grow? So there are some things we do have to enforce. Unfortunately, everything can't be a plain level field saying let's just keep it very flexible. India has a lot of compliance conversations happening. There's a lot of posh statements that keep coming out. There have been malpractices where people have been exited incorrectly in the organizations in the past, and it happens today as well, across the world. So we here are not to enforce policies, but to actually talk a lot about, is this really adding value and ensuring people can thrive and the company can grow at the same time. Getting a party done can be done through an admin team, doesn't need to be done by HR. But knowing the fine balance of what's right and what needs to be done to make things better is where the people function kind of comes in. And I think the third part is where I expect or hope the change to happen is that the people function is actually a growth enabler rather than an enforcer. And I think it's about how we leverage it in a much more meaningful way. So it's about changing that conversation. Now, how does one really get to do that, Shreyoshi? To your point is, the statement is HR needs to have a seat at the table. It's a long, drawn-out conversation that's been going on for years. And when I started, I said, this is the change that the function is going through. People function didn't, it was just told, do this, do that, and it got done. Today, we have the change where the business leader is actually thinking, should I think 2 times before doing this? Let me confer with the people leader at least. So I think that change of, we should have a seat at the table has become more evident. I think in more evolved companies, it's practiced more openly and more formally. In companies that are still evolving and going through that journey of let's move from payroll and admin to now being more strategic. I think that's that evolution that will allow us to be more growth enablers versus enforcers. I think the second part is something that the people function needs to do is evolve to becoming more strategic. And strategy doesn't mean hiring 100 people in this year. That is not strategy. Strategy is about how do you make the dollar value grow for the business? How are you contributing to the growth of the business? And that means some hard calls to be taken at some point of time. But that also means that you are partnering with the business to say, hey, you alone are not driving the agenda to make the money. We are here to enable you, support you. We'll do what it takes to get there, but we are that strategic partner. So even today and in the past when I've worked with my leaders, I've always had this approach of I am an advisor. I am not even honestly interested in having a seat at the table at this point of time versus actually being a guide and an advisor to the business, because the rest of the team can do a lot of that. And I think that is the evolution that will happen once we stop doing what we are told, but asking the right questions. So I think I'll summarize it because I've been speaking for 3 minutes now, I guess. But I think be a growth enabler, stop policing. I think where, if we have professionals from the people function here, really start asking strategic questions. There's a why in everything we do. and really focusing on finding that fine balance by being an advisor, and being a guide to managers, employees, and being available to have those conversations. So I think that's where the misconception could change, but maybe not today for everyone. It will happen in time.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you for clearing the narrative and resonating the thoughts of not just me but so many other HR professionals, and for everybody who is viewing the podcast today about how HR can be actually the growth hacker of the company and how they support businesses and find a way to execute the people strategy, which is core to the business strategy of the company. Coming to my next question, everybody's talking about AI, ML, quantum computing, big data, and these are the buzzwords. And like how it is seeping into every arena, not just computer science but also in HR. How do you see the future of AI in HR? And let me drill this down. I think this will be a bigger topic if we have to seep down HR in every domain, but specific to recruitment per se. There are so many AI bots which are working, or they are doing the sourcing for a recruiter, and it's very difficult for a job seeker to really understand that is it the person who is really doing the shortlisting, or is it actually a real HR person working with AI and making the best use of the technology and finding the creme de la creme of talent? So do you think in the current context, is it a boon or a bane from the HR side as well as the candidate side?
I think it's a blend of both. I'm on the fence always with AI. I love AI, to be honest. It's made life easy in so many ways. I love technology. It's made life easy in so many ways. There are some restrictions that I see. So there are benefits and then there are some constraints. So I think AI today has evolved from 5 years ago. It's pretty clear. AI is very good at building efficiency. It's very good at being efficient. So as an example, from a people function perspective, when it comes to scanning resumes, matching keywords, scheduling the interviews, doing the bulk tactical work which is scanning through 600 resumes. Once you feed it with the algorithm, the machine learning, and all of that, deep learning, I think those are things that AI has been very helpful at from a talent acquisition perspective. Where I see the flip side of it is it's not the same as wisdom. So hiring is becoming smarter, and it will get smarter. But you always need people to be involved. So as a talent acquisition, for the talent acquisition team or for people function, it's about finding a way for it to work smarter together with people. So there is a human judgment, and then there is a tactical piece of work, which is to become more efficient. How can I expect a human being to scan through 600 resumes in a week versus, and there are multiple roles, that's not the only role. So that's 600 resumes amplified by X number of roles versus AI that could be taught to scan the keywords, look for certain behaviors, certain enablers or terms that we want, and then give those resumes. Instead of the individual having to schedule interviews manually, I could have AI do that. I think where it becomes interesting is the human judgment aspect. So no algorithm, I feel, can really pick on creativity, grit, at least as of today. It could happen tomorrow. Don't know about tomorrow, but at least today, it cannot also pick up, I think, the ability to challenge. A resume is just words, so AI will pick up what it is taught. Those are the things that don't possibly fit into the data points where I'm looking for someone who is a superstar. The resume will tell me, I'll find it. But I will always need someone to talk to that person, to find out those, with those questions in mind, based on whatever we have given as a requirement for the role. So it's a bane and a boon in some way. So a lot of companies who are just using AI and have removed half their talent acquisition team may be doing it for the right reasons, and it could be working for them. But in a lot of cases, it's also culling out a lot of the talent that we may not be aware of. So the way I look at it is I always worry a little bit, but that maybe we're too lean, we're heavily dependent on AI because it filters out stuff for us, but it's also filtering out unconventional talent. Today,
Hmm.
you need unconventional talent. You need the thinkers, you need the creators because the world has changed so much. You AI will not be able to figure out a non-linear career path. It will not be able to figure out someone who has learned marketing themselves. It will not be able to figure out the late boomer. It will be able to figure out there is a gap in the resume. Reject. Someone has been on career break. Reject. Someone hasn't done an MBA. Reject. So I think the benefit is it can do things faster, but it will also take away if the human aspect or the surprise aspect of the resume that we will not know. I think so benefits, boon. My 2 cents is I think AI needs to be an assistant right now. Maybe many years later it could replace other aspects and tasks. It needs to be a supporter, not the decision maker. The decision
Hmm.
maker still needs to be that person. So from a people function perspective, we need it because the world has changed. There's a lot more people in the pool. There's a lot more skills that are being learned, and people are getting creative and unique. I could also go and learn digital marketing one day. It,
Absolutely.
and AI will, however, take me out of the pool if I try to apply for a digital marketing role because it will say you worked for so long in HR, right? Um, I think that's where the person comes in, finding that spark in the individual, seeing what's unique about them. For digital marketers and people looking out, I think it's always going to be two parts to it. There is probably going to be AI trying to take the tactical work away, but there's always going to be a human being that you will talk to. You'll never not talk to a human being. Talent acquisition. We are in the world of talent. We're not in the world of bots or AI, right? So there is always going to be someone at the other end of the line. It's just as a function how much we rely on that to take out the relevant and irrelevant profiles. I think that is where AI will play a part. But then I know in our organization, our talent acquisition team uses AI, but we also heavily rely on our talent acquisition people to be able to talk to people and find the right talent.
Awesome.
Well said. I think that's a very big business case, that the HR professional also needs to justify to the CEO, why to sort of retain the team, why to sort of upskill the team. And like the Gen Z say, the AI doesn't get the vibe. By the vibe, I mean the body language, the energy, what the candidate brings on the table. So just last thing before we wrap up and we open the session for questions from our audience. Any tips and tricks that you would like to give to all the applicants on how to beat the bot?
Hmm.
It's a good one. I would say I think I started with this also in the beginning when we started the podcast. I think it's about getting creative. It's showcasing, yes, using the keywords from a profile that is open or a role that is open. So using keywords, yes, from there, but get creative, reach out to a human being as well, because if the AI beats you to it, then at least you're reaching out to talent. Don't have the same standard version of a resume. I know everyone needs their resumes today to be readable through AI, through the platform, let's say through Greenhouse or Success Factors and so on. But go ahead, get creative on your resume. It's the creative, and by creative, I don't mean colorful. By creative, I mean show results in it, show the work you have done, show all the key projects you have worked on, because that is what will stand out to an AI and to a human being. If you give the usual job description, my role is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things, and it doesn't match the keywords of the profile that's open, you'll get cut out automatically. And then the second part is to be human is important. So reach out to a human being. Make your profile, your resume your own. Don't go with the riffraff that exists. There are many templates that do exist, but showcase yourself in that profile, because in this case words speak a lot louder because you're not talking through your resume. I think another option is that I love to see is more videos of candidates just talking through, hey, this is what I've done, this is what I want to do, maybe it's a match. So get creative is my 2 cents that I can share today.
Awesome. Shreyasi, would you like to conclude? What are your thoughts?
Thank you, Gandharvi, for sharing so many insightful, points on how HR is value adding to every organization, how we are business partnering and we are people focused function and not just human remains. And also, tips and tricks that an applicant should keep in mind while applying, in any company. So thank you for sharing all those tips. It was so wonderful speaking to you. And I think I'll let the audience ask the questions and for Lakshit to wrap it up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gandharvi, from the bottom of my heart, from my highest self.